to talk about it is our friend Andy Lee, who has been following the foreign influence beat for years. Andy, great to see you again. Welcome back to the show. We've missed you, but I follow you on Twitter, so I feel like I know what you're up to. Have I been too harsh in my characterization of this judicial inquiry? Is there something actually good going on here, or is it a whitewash?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think a lot of us had high hopes for this public inquiry that had a little bit of different powers, the power to summon witnesses and cross-examine. The only problem is that some of the people who are under suspicion of perhaps, acting under foreign influence, or even on the more serious side of things, there's some accusations that they could actually be, actively working, for a foreign country or foreign government, mostly the PRC. Some of those people have got those powers to cross-examine. And so that's unfortunately led to some human rights groups, and this is the Uyghurs. They do the Uyghur Advocacy Project. So they've pulled out of the inquiry. They're not happy with the way that it's been conducted, and they're not comfortable with the idea, rightfully so, that they could be cross-examined by the people who are accused of maybe aiding and abetting foreign influence. And of course, we're talking about Michael Chan, Han Dong, and Senator Wu. So I think we started off well. There was some conflicts of interest with Hogue. She had some ties to law firms. But I mean, this is the way that Ottawa operates. It's almost impossible to get a judge who doesn't have some sort of ties to someone somewhere, right? But yeah, and it's sort of falling apart. And now we're getting new information as well, that it seems like the scope of the foreign interference is maybe bigger than we first thought. So Stu Bell from Global put something out saying that there was definitely meddling in the 2019 and 2021 elections. Sam Cooper's followed up with that today with a story saying that there were 117 briefs, which they're calling specifically defensive briefs, to politicians, telling them that, to be aware of foreign interference that's been going on. So that's a little bit more serious than what's been led on. I don't know if this is going to change Justice Hogue's perception of things, given that there's new information. One of the people who was the victim of foreign interference was Michael Chong. We know that earlier on in the year, we heard that there were threats made against his family. And this was news to him. He said that he didn't learn about these threats until they came out in stories in, I believe it was the Globe and Mail that published them first. So if there were 117 debriefings given to politicians since May of 2021 on foreign interference, how did Michael Chong get missed in all of this?
Yeah,
How did that information get overlooked?
That's a great question. Of course, he was a conservative politician who was critical of communist China, and he was kept in the dark. That's an interesting story in itself. But 117, I take it that means that CSIS or the RCMP would have contacted, I'm guessing, if I understand it, 117 candidates or sitting politicians and saying, hey, you are being targeted by China to be boosted or defeated. That's an extraordinarily wide battlefront that China has opened up here. I mean, even if, let's say, 4 of those are in each district. So let's say you have a riding, like there's some Vancouver area ridings or Toronto area ridings where there's a lot of Chinese Canadians. I could imagine that the Chinese government would target those districts and every candidate in there. So maybe you have 30 districts where 4 of the politicians eat, but that's still an enormous, that would make the difference. 30 districts, 30 ridings being swayed one way or another is absolutely enough in our minority parliament to choose who wins the election or not. 117 is, and as you point out, that doesn't even include Michael Chong. I don't think Canadians knew the scale of this, and that's just China, sounds like. Who knows what Iran is up to, and others also.
Yeah, that was another interesting thing. So just going through Sam Cooper's report, following up on Global News. So he said specifically it was 71 MPs.
Wow.
That had
71.
That had these defensive briefings. And 15 federal ministers.
Oh my
So
gosh.
15 federal ministers have got these briefings, and I mean, what was done about it, right? We didn't hear about it. We have the site task force, and that's our election sort of watchdog. And what they're supposed to do is they're supposed to do election monitoring, things like that, and alert us if there's any sort of threat to the integrity of our elections. Site wasn't activated, to my knowledge, for 2019, 2021. It was just activated though recently when they were monitoring, they say, for a by-election, and that's when they picked up a secondary campaign against Michael Chong. And that was news as well, right? And we did some work and we actually traced that campaign directly back to the PRC. They said that they could not trace it back to the People's Republic of China. I went onto WeChat. It was very, very quickly able to determine who was putting out this information. It went back to Global Times. So that's a state propaganda
Wow.
broadcaster who was putting out this information. So we found that and we published that article. So yeah, I mean, fascinating, to think that 15 federal ministers had this information, and this is the first that we're hearing about it. And this was through an access to information that anybody could file. And the other thing is that 5 senators were aware.